welcome back to another episode of the Woodsman Perspective Podcast. And it's early March, and I got turkeys on my mind. I'm thinking mid-March anyway.
No doubt about that. And it's getting that time.
Yeah, we're
But it's two things when you think about turkey season: crappie fishing.
I don't usually think about crappie fishing.
I think about eating some crappie
now.
I'm thinking about crappie.
But having said that, a lot of people, there's a big overlap. A lot of people that hunt, the deer hunt and turkey hunt also love the crappie fish.
That's right.
I grew up doing a little bit of crappie fishing, not a whole lot. I don't seem to have time for it. And but we're going to do an episode with a friend of ours. We got Lennis Crimm in here, and you may recognize the name and where we're at. We shifted around a little bit in Hunter's shop. We got some fishing poles behind us.
Good.
That was Chris's idea.
Yeah, I did.
But we're going to talk about crappie fishing, but specifically
Live scoping.
With a live scope, because it's very much like some of the other things we see in hunting, where technology causes division between us and how you use the technology, and is it detrimental to the resource?
Right.
And you can ask 10 people and you probably get 10 different answers. So we're going to dive into that with a friend, Lennis Crimm, and we're going to talk crappie fishing, life, and
live scoping.
Sounds good. All right, here we go, guys. All right, so fishing probably isn't something you've ever heard us talk much about.
Right.
But here we go.
We're
going the Woodsman perspective. We're going to go woods and water style on today, and we're going.
I like that.
We're going to talk crappie fishing, because it's one thing that there's a lot of deer hunters out there that love to crappie fish.
And there's a lot of turkey hunters that turkey hunt in the morning, crappie fish in the evening.
Well, I would love to, and our guests may not approve of this, but I'd love to make crappie fishing great again, so get some of the people out of turkey woods.
Oh, there's enough crappie fishermen as there is.
All right, well, look, we got a guest in here. We're going to talk crappie fishing, but more specifically, we're going to talk about live scope.
Yeah, got a good friend of mine, Lennis Crimm, and I know. Look, that name Crimm is bouncing out there, but Lennis is probably as big a woodsman as there is.
And we'll go back. Let's throw back to one of them early episodes. You know, Hunter loves to pull mouth about how he used to try to earn that woodsman badge. If y'all heard the story about Hunter not being able to earn his woodsman's badge, Lennis was the one that
got him.
That was me. That was me. Yeah. When Hunter started trapping, that was one of my sayings to him till he got his first cow.
Well, thing about Lennis and knowing him before it starts, the man makes his own bows. He made his own duck calls.
Yeah.
He trained my first Labrador Retriever dog.
I have.
He made his own fishing lures. You name it, he was in that swamp over at Millport fishing, hunting, duck hunting. He's done it all.
He was qualified to hand out woodsman badge.
No question. And me and Lennis and his brother Chris, we grew up at Eastwood Hill Swimming Pool. Barry Wilson, when we were 10, 11 years old, 12, they would come over from Millport and we would play wiffle ball. That's right.
You don't see much of that anymore. Community pool.
We was doing them can openers and
having a big time.
Yeah, nutcrackers and everything else off diving board.
Old preacher seat.
Old preacher seat. Hey, these young kids don't know what a preacher seat is, man. That's right. That's 80s right there now.
Yeah, throwing it back.
Yeah, if you could throw a preacher seat, you was pretty good.
Yeah, he done got good.
Funky Donkey.
Done got good.
I remember that.
All right, well, look, Lennis, one of the things with Chris, we talked about this earlier, I think y'all had talked, is if we were talking specifically about live scope and how that could potentially, how it's changed crappie fishing and how it's used, just the ins and outs of it. And look,
I don't. Good and the bad.
Yeah, I like to fish, but I'm not a fisherman. I wouldn't call, I wouldn't, I grew up fishing a little bit, but I'm not an expert at all.
Well, it is getting close to that time of year. You know, a lot of people are starting to think about turkey hunting, and then as the day warms up, they tend to go crappie fishing. And historically, that was the majority of crappie fishing took place during the springtime.
Right.
Live scopes kind of shifted that, in my opinion. Now, all of this stuff that I'm going to give you today is just my opinion. 99 cents will get you a drink somewhere. Right. You know, I mean, that's all you're going to get out of this. But so let me back up. Let me back up just a minute. Let me give you a little bit of history on.
Yeah,
so
good call.
First thing, I'm not the end all know all of this. There's going to be different opinions by different people.
But you bass fish tournament style, you've done it all.
I've got a lot of experience on the Tom Bigby River. I fished pretty much all
from everywhere,
Alabama, Mississippi. Yeah. But I've concentrated on Tom Bigby River.
That's right. Grew up on it.
Yep, grew up on it. Spent most of my life. Started deer hunting on down south of Aliceville, between Aliceville and Utah, where the Sipsey Run and the Tom Bigby are in the mid '80s. And my dad and them were hunting there before.
Warehouser Club.
Warehouser Club,
Yeah.
and so we were in and out and around the river, pretty much all my life. I come from a family of hunters, as most folks listening to this podcast realize that. Pretty strong hunting background. However, I was one of the few of that family that really was passionate about fishing. From a young life. From a child, I fished every ditch.
Oh yeah,
Creek
all
that
around
I could get.
Millport.
Anywhere I could walk to, I fished.
Any fish pond you get a.
If I could get an opportunity to go fishing, I went fishing.
Yeah.
So that I think comes from my great grandfather, who I'm named after, which is
Right.
Lennis Stewart.
Right.
He was a fisherman. I do remember that as a young child, but I was much more passionate than the rest of my family, and I grew up deer hunting and hunting everything, turkey, duck. I had a lot of mentors.
Yeah.
All my uncles, my dad, my grandfather, all of them hunted, but fishing was something that I kind of learned more on my own.
Right.
So I started in 1993 fishing my first bass tournament on the Tom Bigby. Really concentrated on bass fishing for,
You did that for a while, man.
probably,
20 years probably?
oh no. Closer to 30.
Yeah,
I
bass,
just spent.
man.
Hey, look, I spent a lot of money on. I won a little bit, but I wasted a lot more than I ever won. Right?
Kind of like dirt track racing. There's a money
it's not.
prize.
No.
But the cost of entry pretty high.
So the best I can tell, there's three hobbies that can be very expensive for us rednecks, and the number one one's dirt track racing.
Yeah.
Number two would be saltwater fishing.
Yeah.
And number three is probably bass fishing.
Yeah.
So, and then everything else falls below that. But I've met a lot of really good people. I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today. I've had, I don't know, 10 boats in my life. I don't regret purchasing any of them.
Hey,
I've made a lot of friends. I've had a lot of great memories, too, that I've carried with me forever. But I concentrated primarily on bass fishing for the better part from 93 till about probably 2015. I still bass fish. Matter of fact, I'll fish a bass tournament this weekend. I do them, but I'm just a little more selective on how I do them. And I think it's like everything else in life. You get passionate about it. As a young man, you want that attention of doing well. And you guys have heard this saying that young guys want attention and men want respect, and legends don't care one way or the other. You've seen that. Yeah. So in the beginning, I really wanted to perform at a high level, and I wanted that respect from the other fishermen.
To beat those better guys.
Yeah, and then once I kind of felt like I got to that level personally, it was maintaining that. And now I feel like I'm at a level where it doesn't really matter to me. I've won some. I've lost way more than I've ever won. Yeah. And I think that's probably most competitive bass fishermen fall into that area.
What got you jumping from the speed of bass fishing to the kind of the slowness of crappie fishing?
So for those of y'all that maybe haven't never fished a bass tournament, bass tournament is very physically demanding. I know it doesn't seem like.
No, you sitting on that trolling motor.
Yeah, and you
riding that thing.
You think that you fished all day. Surely you've got it, but you're exhausted.
You beat down. Oh yeah.
Well, it requires
that wind,
a lot of mental focus. Yeah, and concentration.
It's like golf.
Yeah.
When you do it at that level, it's mentally draining.
You have to perform at a high level in order to be able to compete, especially the more competitive. And typically competition will come with cost. The more expensive it is to get in one, you've got to perform at a high level. Yeah. And so I had a really good friend of mine. He's a really good fisherman there in Millport. Him and I fished mostly for 20 years together of those 30 years. And we spent a lot of time
Quality
and energy
time,
trying to perform at a high level. And we accomplished that. I'll brag a little bit on us there. I think we went 16 straight tournaments that we either cashed a check or got some kind of.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, that was really good. But now it
Fish
come at a cost.
off.
It come at a cost.
Pre-fishing, fishing. I mean, it's a lot of time.
We lost money.
Yeah.
That make no
Well,
we lost
our buddy, old Big Kellis.
Yeah,
Kellis,
Kellis is a good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, seen Kellis
Kellis, the little sons and bass, them boys catch fish. They little bitty guys.
And my son, he fished the high school trails, and he had success at times, and he continues to fish to this day. So I instilled that fishing with him that I think is introduced at a young age. But how did I shift gears from bass fishing? Now, I still bass fish.
Because a lot of times crappie fishermen don't bass fish, and bass fishermen don't grab. You know
what's funny, and just before we get too far away from you talking about your raising and sort of growing up with those mentors, it's interesting to look now. Outdoorsmen now are more specialized. And you talk about your dad, maybe your uncle, your grandfather, great grandfather. My grandfather, my dad, and uncles, people that hunted, generally they fished too. It's just whatever was in with that time of year, they just shifted with the seasons, and you don't see that as much anymore. Sure. At the level that we talk about hunting and habitat and all, that's a 365-day deal, and a lot of people that are really passionate about. Well, it's kind of like turkey hunting. Maybe don't. Maybe they don't have time.
It's kind of like high school sports. You very rarely see a kid playing 2 or 3 sports now.
But people used to, that outdoorsman used to be more of a generalist, did it all.
I think you're seeing a shift, though, and a shift, and this is, again, an opinion of mine, is you're seeing people financially able to
make a little more money. Yeah,
they make a little more money so they can gear up for deer hunting, and they can gear up for turkey. And then what I mean by that is buying property and basically farming it. Yeah. There's a lot of
you deer farming.
Yeah,
you do. That's right.
Yep. And you see it in ducks as well.
Oh yeah.
And you see it in bass fishing too. You see it in crappie fishing. These people that get dedicated, all it takes is one.
Yeah.
When one person gets dedicated to something, in order for you to compete at that level, you've got to dedicate too, right? Yeah. So they changed the
goes along with one of the stories I heard about the live scope.
Yeah. So you're constantly trying to achieve that high standard.
Yeah.
What shifted gears on me though, back to your question earlier, is I really haven't shifted gears. It was just something new for me, and for me personally, I'm looking for challenges, for something that is different. As Chris and I were talking earlier today before the podcast, that, I'm going to drift back to deer hunting for just a second. So I've deer hunted all my life. I was raised by really good deer hunters. I mean, they were very successful, killed a lot of deer. And naturally, I've been lucky and able to do a lot in Alabama. And so to increase the challenges, I started making my own bows and hunting with my own bows. And that's probably a different podcast we can look into one day. But to create more challenge. Mm-hmm. So to the fishing part, to the crappie fishing part, back in the, I'm going to say middle 80s to late 80s, a friend of mine, and I'm going to throw his name out there. His name's Kevin Suddeth. He grew up here. You're probably familiar with him, Chris. He grew up in the town of Melbourne, Alabama, which is smaller than Fernbank. For you guys that don't know, that's
pretty small.
Population of probably 30. Yeah. But they had a camp down on the Sipsey River, and his dad, that's the first recollection I have of crappie fishing,
like
was
a fish
with
camp.
him. He had a fish camp on the edge of the river, and he took us out crappie fishing one morning. That was a brand new experience for me, and I remember tying up to a stump and taking basically cane poles, a cork and a minnow, and being real quiet. And we would catch 2 or 3, and then it would go stale for a minute, and then it would fire back up. We'd catch 2 or 3, and it was slower pace though. Yeah. Back then I wanted to throw and reel, and then through my 20s and 30s,
you want to sling that buzzbait.
Man, I want to throw, I want to reel, and I want to work at it. Yeah. As I've gotten older and got a little more patient, I've crappie fished this entire time I bass fished, just at a much smaller level. I would go, 10 times during the spring when they were up spawning, and then I would probably, going back to what I think is the purest form of fishing, guys, in my opinion, is a cork.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love to watch a cork go under. I mean, it is one of the most purest forms of fishing I think there is.
Pretty easy too.
Well, if you do right. Well, it depends on how
Yeah.
you measure success. It's catching, or not. It's easy, but catching can make it complicated. But so I would go especially in the early fall, September, October in Alabama, Mississippi typically is the drier times of season. So you would get the water, the river would clear up, it'd become stable, and it would stay stable for weeks at a time. And then I would go crappie fish some treetops on the main river, and I had limited success. I could catch enough to eat.
That's right. They're pretty good now.
Ain't no fish better than
No, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and I think that's part of the issue.
If y'all get invited to a fish fry and it's crappie, you come on.
Well, let all the buddies eat the catfish, and you get them little pile of crappies over here by yourself.
But so I've always experimented with it, but I was so focused in trying to compete at a higher level bass fishing, I just couldn't spend the time on it that I wanted to. And then along came Live Scope. So I've got some notes. Hopefully I can see them to kind of bounce back to them. And again, this is my opinion, guys. This is what I've experienced over the last.
So tell them what a Live Scope is real quick, Lennis. I mean, that's the people that don't know it.
A Live Scope is a forward-facing sonar that projects the sonar forward.
And you got a screen.
You got a screen.
Yeah,
you've got a screen you're looking at, and it's a fairly narrow beam going forward. A traditional depth finder shoots straight below a boat, and it's I don't know
like a hummingbird or something like that.
I remember we had a depth finder, a fish finder when I was a kid, and
hummingbird.
You see these as real dipdoor,
little lines,
little spots, and I didn't have a clue where it was.
Right.
I knew the sensor was on the back of the boat because I get in trouble if I tore it up.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is, and this is my opinion, somebody that's really, really, really knows this will probably argue with it. They're probably right. But
look, you can be 100% right. Somebody's going to argue.
That's right.
So we can get that out of the way now.
Have you guys seen those? I don't know if this is correct or not, but I call them the Chinese fans. The ones that fold up and fold out. And you use them and then fan yourself.
Kung Fu Theater. They can throw them like throwing star. Yeah.
Well, if you picture that fan blown out and it's shining straight below a boat, you fan it out and it looks straight beneath the center of a boat. Or usually they're mounted on the
trolling motor.
No. I'm sorry. The transom of the boat.
Yeah.
Usually they're mounted on the transom, the traditional one, and it shines a beam straight down. And let's say it's 60 degrees, and it's showing that fan below the boat. Well, typically you're over those fish, right?
Right over top of them.
We'll take that same transducer and mount it on the front, and then hold it out horizontal, right? Instead of vertically straight down, it's shooting forward.
Yeah.
And it's shooting from the surface of the water down to the
And if you got that joker on a stick, you can aim it anywhere
that's
you want.
Exactly
right?
right. However, the beam's not real wide, right? So you got to remember, you've only probably got a 20-degree width that's covering, we'll say, 60 degrees up and down. So
how deep will that sucker reach?
However deep you want it to.
Really?
Now, there's different models. There's an extended range that would go for salt water that could reach down hundreds of feet, I would assume, Chris. Naturally, I don't have any experience with that, but I'm comfortable with 30 feet or less with mine.
So if you come up with some tops, Lennis, and you're sitting there and you got some structure, you can aim it at each one of them structures and kind of figure out where they're at.
Sure can. So let's get back, though, where I'm trying to catch up here. I'm getting ahead of myself. What I had some curiosity around Live Scope. And
well, it's technology.
And so I personally believe in change. I think change is a good thing most of the time. Sometimes it's not, but most of the time growth is, it comes with change. So growing is always a good thing. I've got curious about Live Scope and crappie fishing.
But you like to win, too. And that's the way to win. Live Scope gives you a winning
any advantage you can get, right?
Yeah.
So I had a friend, actually, and I'm going to tell you my Live Scope story. I had a friend that bought one. He said, I think I'm losing some money on some of these bass tournaments through Live Scoping. And I said, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
He said, I think I'm going to buy one. And he bought one. He kept it a year or two. And he's like, I no, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
And I said, well, he said, I think I'm going to sell it. And I said, I'm curious about crappie fishing with one of them. I said, I think I see a lot of benefits to crappie fishing. One of them totally different from bass. Crappie typically are stationary.
That's right. They're staged.
They typically surround structure.
Yeah.
And they'll stay. And they don't move a
They
lot.
like their depth of water.
Bass tend to roam a little bit. They're a little harder to get calm, right?
Yeah.
I always refer to bass as the pit bull of fish, right?
Unless they're on the
he's
bed, they're
aggressive.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah, unless they're on the bed, and even then they're moving. They're working in circles most of the time defending that bed. But so I said, you know what? I'll buy it. He said, man, I've got the whole setup. I've got batteries and everything, and we'll dig into what all, in my opinion, it requires the live scope later on. So I purchased it, and the first week, I couldn't wait to try it out. You know, every kid likes to try out their new toys.
No
New
doubt.
technology.
And it wasn't cheap either, I can just tell you.
No, and I bought it
and
used.
Lennis is tight now. He didn't know he ain't gonna spend no damn money now.
Yeah,
He tight now.
But on week 2, I said, this is the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. I said, man, I have wasted some money, thousands of dollars.
Right.
I'm
That's
like,
right.
whoa, man. Kind of hate to tell my wife, you know, this might be a mistake. But so I was trying to figure it out, though. It was a whole new world. And there's a couple, here's some advice I'd give anybody that's wanting to try live scoping out and is new to it. There is you can fast forward this. If you can find someone that is proficient in live scoping, they can help you tremendously and advance you really quick. I do better. Couple of things. I've always said that Chris alluded earlier to my lab training days. I always thought that I was successful at lab training because I think like a dog. I learned through repetition. You know, I learned through repetition. That's how a lab or any dog learns, is through repetition. And so I got out and started fighting live scope on my own. I didn't know what I was looking at. I mean, man, I went to some places I had been catching them without live scope. So I know
you made some calls and figured out how to read that thing.
Well, I knew there was some fish there, Chris.
Yeah.
And I said, I know they're here.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I'm looking at. So I caught one without a live scope, just corking a minnow, and it went under, and I caught one, put it in a live well. And I kept looking, and I still didn't know what I was looking at. I went back and hooked that fish on a hook and dropped it in front of that live scope so I could tell
identify it.
what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
You know, so I watched it swim around, and true story, I released that fish. I said, you've served your purpose. I turned them loose.
Right.
There's a learning curve for me. When you're going at it solo, I didn't know a lot of people. This is probably 2020 to 2021, Chris, somewhere in that time.
4 or 5 years ago.
And these dates are close. I don't know exactly. I didn't write a journal or anything.
I imagine during COVID, there's a bunch of crappie that met their match.
A bunch of turkeys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the live scope is, speaking of turkeys live scoping, and you know, I count the cell phone or the cell camera for a lot of deaths of turkeys now, similar to live scope. But anyway, we're live scoping today. I kept fooling with it. I was bound and determined to learn more about it. And I don't know if it's mastering, but to learn more about it. So I just went every single chance I got. And you know, I fish probably more than the average fisherman. However, I don't fish as much as I used to. My job is more demanding now. I don't have time.
More responsibility in your job
in my job, and I don't have the time to spend on it. But back in that time, you know, every weekend, and one of the things that's fortunate for me is I have a camp on the river, which I've been very blessed, and I recognize that. Yeah, that helps. Every weekend I would go fishing, and so I would focus more on live scope and spending those days
where they're at.
I wasn't catching much.
Yeah,
I wasn't catching much.
Was it the depth of the water, Lennis? What was you? I mean,
I didn't know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
You
didn't know how to read it yet.
I didn't know how to read. I didn't understand it, and I could see fish, but I didn't know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
I'd see all kinds of fish.
Did you have it on a stick at that time?
I do run mine on a stick, and I've got some stuff here later on in the podcast.
I mean, you knew how to crappie fish before.
I knew.
I'm joking with fish.
Did that make you get off of the? Did that make you get away trying to crappie fish with a live scope? Did you get away from some of the things that you?
I done what I had been taught my entire life.
So you didn't change when you were looking at the live scope, trying to figure out live scope.
But I had always been taught to fish treetops, brush, rough areas, which are difficult to see with a live scope. So there's a couple of things, and let's go into that. There's a couple of things about what your grandpa taught you about Crappie fishing. Typically, dogwoods are blooming. Crappie are on the bank. Been my experience through live scope that by the time the dogwoods are blooming, a lot of it's done happened.
Yeah.
You're a little bit late.
Yeah.
But what you're finding is that through live scope, I found that there's several things that I found to be not necessarily in 100% agreement with what Grandpa taught you. So what I'm saying
That's
is,
interesting.
Yeah,
I've heard other people say they learned a lot.
So what I'm saying is the things I learned from live scope is I've always been told that crappie only come up to eat. That is not true. I mean, this is not an opinion. This is the truth. I've watched thousands.
You talking about come up out of deep water to shallow water?
I've always been told crappie want their bait above their head. They come up to eat. They never go down to eat. So if you're 6 inches below a crappie, you're not going to catch it. You've got to be above crappie. That is not true.
Okay.
That is not true. They will go
Myth
down.
busting.
They will go up.
Makes sense. They're hungry. They're going to go where the hell they need to go again.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Live scope is a very good tool to learn. Yeah, I've noticed, Chris, that color.
Mm-hmm.
So we were very hung up on color, like
bait color.
You need to fish this color.
Chartreuse white,
color,
whatever. Yeah,
whatever. Chartreuse white, pink head, whatever. I agree with that a little bit now, but not near.
You're not hung up on it.
No, I don't really care anymore.
Yeah.
Presentation is probably number one. How you get it in front of them.
You get an opportunity to watch that firsthand with the live scope.
To see them
that
response.
lines up with what a buddy of mine was telling me that
see their
they learned a lot
response.
once you could see it.
You know, and the thing, Lennis, I guess you'd agree. Used to, like you said, you pull up on that stump and you catch 2 or 3, then you go that next one. But if you knew there was 15 sitting under there, you wouldn't go nowhere.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's what makes it so deadly. You know, efficient. Yeah, you know, it's just like that cell camera you're talking about.
Right.
Deer hunting.
Right.
If I know that 150's there, I'm probably going to sit a little longer. I'm probably going to get a little earlier in the stand. You know, I mean, it's the same thing as when we talk technology.
Yeah. You said earlier that, you know, Grandpa's way and the way you talk to fish is that those tops and those tough spots, and that's harder for a live scope to see into. Have you found that the live scope is even more effective earlier before they come up, like crappie in deep water?
So
there's less structure, less interference.
For me, the live scope shines in deeper water. So
That's
when fish are move up on the bank and they're 2 to 3
so you like
feet,
catch them transitional, getting, you know, coming out of 7-8 foot of water going up to 3.
I want to catch them holding.
Okay.
I want to catch them before they get there, right?
Because when they get on the bank, it's tough.
hard to see them. For me, now there's somebody that turns it to perspective.
Yeah, when they're that deep.
Which perspective mode will turn that fan that I'm talking about that's running vertical, it'll turn it to horizontal. So they can see. But
so
I haven't
catching
had
these dang crappie 2 and 3 weeks before they ever get up there on the bank.
You can maul them.
Okay.
They congregate.
So that's serious. And
they congregate.
While everybody else is not taking their days off work, that guy with that live scope's wearing them out.
Look, the old men, the professional crappie fishermen, they're starting way before anybody. Because I used to, me and my good friend Wayne Roberts and some of those boys in Vicksburg would duck hunt on show card, and we'd be coming out
and they crappie
in
fish.
Duck season.
Sure.
And there'd be old men already out there bundled up in coveralls, and they were out there trolling, and they were crappie fish. They were the serious ones. So it's good. You can catch them then.
Well, the other thing too that live scope doesn't do well is, let's take we've all seen a cedar tree, you know, a cedar tree in the water.
Yeah.
It's real brushy and it's hard. You can. And
somebody's Christmas tree.
That was a big thing back in the days.
Yeah,
everybody in the neighborhood get the Christmas tree and go
you've
sink
got
them
to get
cinder block.
Pretty good with a live scope, start picking those fish out of there. But you can do it. I don't. I have found that, you know, in the past, I was told that crappie like rough cover, you know, a lot of limbs, a lot of brush.
But they don't that much.
They don't.
That's good.
They do not.
They like ledges and
they do like structure, but it doesn't have to be near as much as I originally.
So structure, you talking about maybe
a limb,
a limb, just one limb.
I have seen one limb.
There's no tree that fell over in the river.
I've seen
hanging.
a whole tree in the river can have a lot of fish in it, and a lot of times it does.
Yeah.
But I have seen one water oak limb that say 3 inches in diameter, Chris, fell off a tree, and it held 25 crappie on it.
Golly.
So they really. And
That's pretty neat. I wouldn't have believed that.
They do
wild.
orient to structure, and they do want to be around structure, but it doesn't have to be near as rough as we.
So we were thinking for years that you had all this big stuff and
had to get right in the middle of all the rough stuff. But no.
Stay hung up more than you stay in.
No,
Yeah.
they suspend way more than anyone ever thought. So let me tell you a story. So my experience has been. You can be in, it appears to me, and this is an opinion, that crappie move vertical in the water column. So when we think they go to the banks, I'm not sure that they don't come up almost vertical, Chris, to 2 foot and then go to the bank instead of just migrating. We want to think they go up the bank and get there.
Slope of the.
So let's talk about water temperature.
temperature.
Let's talk about water temperature. The top 2 feet will be warmer than anything.
That's
Listen,
right.
I have caught hundreds of crappie in 12 foot of water, 2 foot deep. 2 foot deep in 12 foot of water.
Golly.
There will be stumps.
With
there will be
no
trees.
material.
No, well, I've done both.
Okay.
But there will be, say there's a snag. So
Yeah.
there's a tree that's broke off. It's underwater. It's 10, 12 foot deep.
Well, if you
He will-
fishing in Tom Bigby, they flooded all that stuff
That's
in the
right.
80s. So
That's
you got
right.
the old trees just sitting there.
So he will
flooded.
come vertically up that tree to within 2 foot of the top of the water.
That's wild.
And you can hammer. So I'll
And that's stuff that you wouldn't have caught
Never.
without that live scope.
never dreamed of it. But now, however, the ones that you don't catch without live scope are the ones that suspend.
But Lennis, growing up, most of the good crappie fishermen that always blew the smoke and had the old coolers and run them in there and get another cooler, but they were catching them when they were in that 2 foot of water. So they were catching them when they were right on the bank.
Traditionally, so what happens is you can see the structure at that point, right? You see what you're fishing, and
visible structure.
Yeah, it's the visible structure. You don't have any way of knowing that this tree. And occasionally you'd come by a stump and drop by and go, "Well, man, I caught that fish out in the middle of nowhere, 10 foot of water, 2 foot deep."
Yeah,
go figure. On my way to the bank, but what I found, Chris, is well. Let me give a tip. This is a Lennis Crimm tip. Take it for what it's worth. When you find a school of fish on the treetop, very seldom will they be very big. There will be keepers. Maybe,
but they won't be them big slabs.
Maybe even a 12-inch, which is a good fish.
Yeah.
But the real monsters will not be in the school.
They loners.
They're loners.
Like that old big turkey.
Like that big deer.
Yeah. Stay in his own little thicket.
There may be, if you'll look around some of these concentrations or these schools of fish in these tops, usually within about 30 foot of them will be 6 on a little piece of structure by themselves. They'll be hammers. Magnums.
Really? That's cool, man.
Very seldom do I see them in a group.
So sometimes do you look for them, Lennis? If you see,
absolutely.
You see 25 and all of a sudden you shang and then there's a 6, you're going to go try to catch them 6 first, right?
Yeah. So I'm trying to run through this. And hopefully I'll get back to this. I have some personal limits that I've done with crappie fishing that I do. It doesn't mean it's my opinion of what
I like
do.
that. Well, I want to come back to that too for sure. If you're moving on, because I think we got to police ourselves when we got access to that kind of technology.
Yeah, we do. So and that's why I appreciate, number one, I appreciate you guys allowing me to be on your podcast. Appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah,
I do think there is an opportunity for us as fishermen to, and outdoorsmen, it is our duty to take care
manage
of
our resource.
Well, it's it's finite, right? So I mean, there's a limit to all of it.
Silent Spring ain't no good for nobody.
Right? No, exactly.
Limit, we got to police ourselves sometimes, and that may mean not shooting that state limit, not doing it.
That's right.
Can.
That's exactly right. So
fluid.
take care of the resources.
And
take care of the resources.
We're right here, but so when you told me about the live scope, and talked to Brent, I started making some calls, and I knew some buddies of mine and Brent's go out and fish Grenada and Enid and those big lakes where they were known for big slab crappie.
Yeah.
And destination crappie.
Yeah, destination crappie. I mean, that's what people would pay to go, $400 or $500 to go fish a half a day. But they're changing those limits, Lennis, and
so
I think live scope has got something to do with it.
It does.
And watershed and different
those
things.
are watershed lakes up Grenada,
control.
Enid, Sardis, all of those lakes. And I'm not an expert on them. Grenada's world renowned for its crappie and
Big
the 3-pounders,
Yeah.
3-pounders is certainly a trophy. As a matter of fact, I caught a 16-plus inch crappie the other day at Gainesville down there.
That's
So
wow.
He's
What's
still
the biggest
swimming.
crappie you ever caught?
I don't know. I don't.
2 or 3 pounds, probably.
Oh, I've caught a lot of 2.
They got mouths that big on them. Won't they?
Oh, they're way bigger. Yeah, they can eat a tennis ball almost. Chris.
Yeah, don't miss
God,
that, guys. He said that 16 inch is still swimming.
It is. It's still swimming.
Yeah, I didn't want that to get missed.
It's still swimming.
That's wild.
When I first started the live scoping, and naturally as I was getting better, I kept most of them because they are good eating. And bass fishermen have developed release. You very seldom see people keeping bass, especially on public water.
Oh, they'll hot eye you on them.
Yeah,
bass
yeah,
now.
yeah. They'll.
It ain't like pond fishing.
It's not a cool thing to do,
Yeah.
but you see a few people keep schoolers in the summer and stuff. But crappie, however, though, are
such a delicate.
well. Let me tell everybody that's listening on this podcast, you don't have to count crappie when you clean them. You can count them when you catch them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
don't have to keep all of them.
But everybody wants that. It's hard to get that Instagram picture on the Yeti cooler.
How many white picnic tables are out there
That's
layered
right.
in crappie?
Yeah.
That
It's
so
the same
everybody.
plague that attacks the wild turkey.
It does.
A fellow
It
with
does.
a fellow with
It
a natural
does.
light
It
and a
does.
cigarette and
Yeah.
a picnic table full
Well,
of crappie.
it goes back to we want attention, right?
Yeah.
Look at what we've done.
But they're good to eat. I don't think
I
crappie
get
get
that.
wasted now.
I agree.
No,
with
they
that.
eat 'em.
I think people eat them.
So you say that, Chris, but I know people that catch 800 to 1,000 plus crappie a year and keep them. How many can you eat?
I agree.
How many can you eat? Till you start giving them away.
On my thing, I'm that guy that's looking for some. My crappie fishing buddies, I don't
Bring me some.
bring me some,
Bring me.
and I'll clean them. How about that one?
Bring me some.
Oh, yeah,
We cleaned a bunch of them. Yeah, me and Brent. Look, I got 2 electric knives. I ain't caught a limit of crappie in 20 years, but I've ate a bunch of limits because I tell folks to bring me some.
We'll take them if y'all want to give some more.
We're telling you now, Lennis,
How
we want
long is
some.
this
Yeah.
podcast typically last?
Just-
An hour.
Look, an hour is a good
I'm
solid
trying
episode,
I'm
but-
trying to get it out of here for you. So
No, you good.
I got a lot of information here that I'm
You
trying
told me
to
some
spit
stuff that
out.
I didn't know.
They
you
say
know-
the mind can only process what the butt's willing to bear. So as long as we can sit here,
These chairs ain't the best, Brent.
they hunters.
So
Man.
a couple of things though that I had noticed about these crappies that I wasn't aware of is typically the bigger ones are loners. You'll have schools of a lot of small fish that are real small. There's some studies done out there.
When you say it's real small, this big.
oh yeah, 2-3
Yeah.
inches
Yeah.
up to 6 inches.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Grenada. Let's go back to the watershed lake. So they draw those down every
Winter.
fall, every winter, every fall, and they
the
draw
winter
those
pool.
down.
You hear the
and-
term winter pool. That's what. that is.
Typically, what impacts those lakes are how much rain do we get that winter? Is the spawning habitat good? And there's some experts in that area
Right.
that would certainly
Yeah.
be more
People fish it all the
opinionated
time.
than I am. But
Yeah.
so, do they get enough water to flood the shallow areas to have a good spawn?
They need that shallow area,
Spawn
yeah.
is the number one thing that determines the crappie populations. You can't hardly.
Down.
You all right?
No, I'm stiff legged it to keep
All
my
right.
ass from going to sleep.
So
He put his kickstand down.
Yeah, I did.
the spawn drives the crappie population. So
Yeah, and these watershed
it's-
lakes, they draw
Yeah,
them
yeah, they
down
draw
in the
those
fall
down,
to
so-
take winter rain, so they'll be really, really low.
And
level.
if you, what you said in the last 2 years, we ain't had no lot of winter rain.
Grenada, for instance, it's notorious for crappie fishing, and again, there's residents up there that have more expertise than I do. But if they don't spawn well naturally, that affects more than anything man can do. Right?
Yeah, especially when you pull them out of there.
But LiveScope made an impact at Grenada? So I've got some information here, and you guys can and I pulled this off of Google, which is what it is, right?
I like Google now.
So it's just it's a guy by the name of Keith Mills. I'm gonna drop his name.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's Mississippi Wildlife and Fisheries or something,
Okay.
and he said that there's some interesting facts. Hopefully, I can read these without my glasses, but.
Showing our age, Lennis.
Yeah, I know. Some of the lakes went from 15-person. This is Grenada. I'm really referring to down to 10-person limits, and then a 3-person boat. Let's say all 3 of us go fishing in a boat at Grenada. We can only catch 25.
Really?
3 people, doesn't matter. 3-person boat.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
3 persons.
Okay. But and I can see it, Lennis, like you just told me. If you catching 10 big hammers, that ain't like 15 little jacklegs.
That's right.
Is it not? I mean, I don't know.
No, I'm talking about the fish wise.
I know,
the amount
but
of
as far
fish.
as the population.
Well, I don't know about that.
Impact,
I'm thinking them teeth
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought. Yeah.
So let's talk about these numbers, guys, though. Let's look at it. Poor water levels. This is number 1 impact of crappie populations, right?
If they don't have some good,
they don't have spawning habitat,
water.
they can't spawn, right? Second thing is the Asian carp seems to be, and I don't know if this is Grenada or not, they just referred to Asian carp. I don't know if Asian carp eat the fry or if they eat the eggs out of the bed, but apparently
Really?
Asian carp impacts
I heard that.
This is just what I read. And then live scope is in there too, right? They mentioned live scope. In 2021, 20% of the fishermen were using live scope. In 2023, 70% of the fishermen that fish for crappie were using live scope. This harvest rates were 2 to 3 times larger than non-live scope users. So let's talk.
TSS.
yeah.
Lennis, like TSS.
Lennis, personal. Tell me this, because people going to.
Let's talk
They're going
about
to know
Lennis.
you personal.
Let's talk
personal
about
wise.
Lennis. So
you went from a 300 crop a year
no,
to a 500.
I didn't fish them as hard then, but I did fish them. Chris, I averaged 100, 125. Yeah, 150.
Just for y'all to eat.
And then when I really got more focused on the crappie fishing and spending more time on it, I remember catching 300 one summer.
Which is a dang bunch of them.
That was the first year I got live scope. But now I fished a lot for crappie.
Sure, right.
I went from 20 trips a year to, let's just say 40. I doubled.
Brent, if you can't tell how he talks, that joker he masters a duck call, okay? He masters a turkey call. He gonna master anything he does. That's just his game, is to master what he's doing.
It goes back to
I'm telling you, that's
Well,
just
he's
how it
thoughtful
was.
about it all too.
Well,
there's a strong conservationist lean in there too.
but
There
he's
is,
competitive with himself
He's not just
to
a taker.
excel.
Yeah.
So I went to 300, and then the next year it went to 500.
Golly.
And then
That's a lot of crappie.
It got to
600, 700.
I think. I don't know, Chris.
So you could smoke them if you wanted to. That's pretty good.
I could, Chris, but I'm seeing some changes that I want to get into that we want to talk about.
Sure.
What I'm seeing between then and now.
I want you to talk about what you see.
But we're going to run back to what the Mississippi Wildlife and Fisheries is saying. That at Grenada Lake, that a 12-inch crappie is 3 to 3.5 inches, 3.5 years old.
12-inch one.
12-inch on Grenada. So water quality is going to affect growth rates on anything. You know, it's just like habitat for deer or turkey.
Turkeys, yeah.
So, Texas, the Wildlife and Fisheries for Texas said a 10-inch crappie could reach that size in a year and a half.
That's what I figured, yeah.
So
if he's got good food.
One of the and again, I'm not a biologist, not a fish biologist, but one of the misconceptions that we have is that the brooding or the breeding fish are the big ones. That's not necessarily true. A 10-inch fish is a mature fish that is capable of reproducing. So it is not just the big fish that naturally big fish can reproduce, but the 10-inch they're sexually mature. Is what I read.
I didn't know that.
Understanding. So
I didn't know that one.
Depending on water quality, and I don't know what the Tombigbee River is, which is where I primarily focus. How old a 10-inch fish is on a Tombigbee? I would guess
It'd be pretty close to.
I would think too.
Yeah.
It's probably not as good as some of the Texas fisheries like Lake Fork and Toledo Bend,
Eagle.
which is shared. Yeah, and Sam Rayburn and some of those are probably a little better. But
grew up fishing Toledo Bend.
Okay, all right. I fished Toledo Bend last year for crappie actually, and we had a lot of success on it.
Louisiana side or Texas?
We put in Louisiana.
Logan Sport area, probably.
I don't
fish
recall
out
the
of it.
name of that.
Remember, Brent, you pulling a Rain Man on it.
There was a
So I grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was. I know there was a fish house that we ate at on the east side of the lake that was really good. I forget the name.
Don't say they had walleye.
No, it was catfish of all things. It was really good. It's an older fish house there,
Yeah.
though. You may be familiar with it. But anyway, so back to the Tom Bigby River. Between then and now for Lennis. So when I first started live scoping, well, let's go back just a minute. There is a huge debate between live scoping and non-live scopers. The traditionalists,
I can see that.
the first thing I'm going to tell you, everybody that doesn't like live scope doesn't own one. I'll promise you they don't probably own.
Yeah, it's like them guys with a fan and a decoy and I mean, it's just everything.
So I would think, though, for me,
if it's legal,
yeah, it's legal.
We said it earlier, that cellular trail camera, fanning for a turkey, TSS loads, thermal drones. There's technology has made us more efficient.
It has.
Everybody individually, I think, has a point where
but
I'm in it for this. There's a point for each
we're not
individual.
shooting everyone we see. Just like you're not catching everyone he sees, you know.
But that's an individual decision. We got to regulate.
We got to be conservationists, and so what you see, the biggest thing I see is live scopes cheating, and that's for the guys that haven't live scoped. There's an art to live scoping. Actually, it is not a plug and play. I promise you. And Chris, I don't mean this disrespectful. I can give you my boat and live scope, and you're not going to catch anything.
No, I can tell you I won't. But I'm going to find somebody that can run it.
There you go. But you can go with someone that can.
Yeah.
Someone that has spent that time to do it.
Yeah.
So I know as many
people.
I know as many people, and y'all believe this now. I know as many
people. But look, I don't even know how to email now, Lennis.
I know as many people that have a live scope that can't catch fish on it, that have live scope that can catch fish on it.
Yeah.
It is not.
Ain't had a Lennis Crimm show them how to run it.
It is not automatic. It is not plug and play.
He has not had somebody like him show you how to run it.
It is not a plug and play. And so when you go out, you still got to know what you're looking for.
You still got to use the old.
You're a fisherman.
Yeah,
you got to go back to what you know work and get yourself around.
Well, your granddaddy taught you.
Then when you learn, now you put it in the hands of the right man. It is hunting and fishing at the same time. He'll hunt them down and he'll catch them.
Can you catch them? Can you catch them in gravel pits like that good too?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, me and you going to get together.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I want to catch a fish. I ain't done it 20 years.
We can work them over.
Yeah.
But
they need catching anyway.
When these guys, they get one, they think, well, man, I got to have one. This guy's catching 40 fish every time he goes out. I got to have one.
And I've talked to you, I'd have to have him one.
Yeah, you think I got to have one. Now, the guy that doesn't have one, the guy that's beat the bottom out of 3 different boats, learning how to catch crappie.
Yeah.
He's spent his whole life dedicated to him. He knows how to catch them.
But he's catching 200 crappie.
Well, traditionally he would catch 5, 6, 7, 800 of them. He despises live scopers. He cannot stand the ground because they're advancing.
I can see that.
They're advancing
purist.
so.
He's a purist.
He's a purist, and he sees these guys, and I'm one of them that excelled really, really fast, into numbers, if you're looking at just numbers. And it hurts him. He's used to going in the spring, I fish 3-4 days a week during the spring. I just wire them out, and now I can't seem to do that because I blame it on live scoping.
Yeah.
I think there's some truth to that, Chris. I think some of that is true, and I think that's part of this podcast today that I think we need to talk about is, what did I see earlier on that I don't see now? And when I first started, I could find these schools of fish. And, oh, man, I would have 20 different spots, Chris, that I knew where fish were.
You can catch fish like that.
Well,
I guess we put that scope on them.
You put the scope on them, and the scope tells you where they're at. And like I said, the scope's a tool, too. You can learn a lot from it. You can learn a lot of things.
I bet you learn your holes. As far as
you
structure.
do.
Learn behavior.
You learn behavior.
Fish respond.
The biggest thing is behavior.
That's cool.
So you can see fish on a root ball.
Like you talking about them things coming up to 2 foot.
Let's say there's a root ball in the river and the rest of the trees pointing downstream. Typically, they like to be on root balls. There's your pointer. So they'll be on the upstream side, stuck behind a root ball. you know, and they're waiting on bait fish, and they use that root ball for current break, in my opinion,
To save,
referring to Tom Bigby River, right?
They're saving
it's
energy.
Everything I've been around, and here's
the
another.
upside of it, in the current. They're not on the downside of it.
They're on the downside.
Oh, you're on the downside. I thought you said on the upside.
So, depending on how active they are. So, the Tom Bigby River, and this is some bass fishing, crappie fishing tips if you want to take it, is a current-oriented system. Everything there revolves around current, even catfish.
Oh, yeah.
It's a river. Now, there's Tennessee River, but those lakes are so big. Even current, though, when they generate current up there, it helps the bite. But on the Tom Bigby, bass relate to current heavily.
Yeah.
Crappie do too, though, because that's, you know, it brings
That's
feed
where
to
they
them.
feed.
Catfish do it too. I mean, I run catfish baskets in the winters and in the winter, and then, you know, they are oriented to current too. It brings food to them. But
Boy, ain't nothing better than them little Yellow Creek.
oh man, those
Catfish in
channel
them baskets.
cats, those
Woo.
little channel cats are outstanding.
They ain't got no smell at all on them.
Oh man, they're outstanding.
Neither does
Look,
crappie.
Little whole
I agree.
price, but
Yeah, I don't know why I'm trying to get away from crappie. They're the best.
but
Yeah.
but when I ran up to those root balls, Chris, and I would see
That's crazy you can see that root ball like that. It's
10,
wild.
I would see 10 fish on that root ball, and this is
So
let's
you
say
trying to identify the big ones and little ones?
2020. Nah, you know, I was just fishing.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes
Yeah.
it's big, sometimes it's little, but typically on those root balls, they are what they are. And if you get across enough, if you can come across enough structure in a stretch of river, you can see where the fish will start distinguishing by size. You'll see the bigger ones over here and some of the smaller ones here. And again, there's someone else going to probably say, that's not what I see it, but this is just what Lennis has seen. So when you come up that root ball, though, in 2021, there's 10 fish on there. I'd feel sorry for them. After I caught 5 of them, I'm like, man, that's
You went on.
Yeah, it's time to go on. So
Yeah.
I would go to the next spot, and I would find another root ball or treetop, whatever it was, and I'd catch a few. And conditions vary. I would tell you this: the old saying that when we would go out with prior to live scope, fish aren't biting today. No, they're biting. You just don't know where they're at.
That's right. No, I mean,
95% of the time they're biting.
Used to, they wanted the water 70 degrees, right?
Yeah,
that was the big thing. You know, 70 and it's got to be sun and got to be.
They're born
dogwoods
into
blooming.
this world to do 2 things. They're here to eat and to reproduce,
That's right.
Survive. So they're eating. Cold fronts. My experience with live scope, cold front came. They're
So there
they
ain't no
push
really.
off.
There ain't no. Let me put it this way. Lockjaw, or they're not biting. There ain't no such things, is it?
My opinion, 95% of the time they'll bite.
Yeah. Well, I believe
Look,
you.
I
I'm
talked
telling
to
you.
my buddy. I dropped his Ken Kemp. Me and Ken hunted together for years.
He's a
Ken,
good fisherman.
Ken crappie fishes a lot.
Oh
of
yeah,
guys.
he fishes in
And
them
when he said
waders.
some of the things you said verbatim
Okay.
about the watershed and that water being way more impactful to the fish than a live scope.
Yeah.
And the same thing you said, all the things he can learn from being able to watch the fish. And days when you thought they weren't there or they weren't biting, and you actually, instead of being 2 inches from them, you were 4 inches. You were out.
Yeah.
And that's how they were behaving that day.
So you were where they were. Let's say we go in March and it's pretty. It's warmed up to 70 degrees. We wore them out on the bank for 2 days. And we go back and it came a cold front and we're like, man, there's just no fish here anymore. I don't know. They got lockjaw. They probably just backed off.
Yeah.
They just probably backed off in the deep water. And now they won't chase. They won't run 3 foot to get a bait. But if you hang a jig right on their nose,
He'll bite it.
Say sometimes they won't go 3 inches to get it.
sometimes they will not.
But Lennis, I see a positive, and I look at everything at people, because we live in a negative world a lot of times for success. I mean, really, successful people, negative. But I look at, you've been a baseball coach.
Yeah.
You were a
Yeah.
basketball coach.
Softball, yeah.
You softball. You've done everything. So time is our limiting factor.
That's it.
That's the other thing.
Time is our limiting factor. I'm rushing everywhere I go. Rushing to come to this podcast. Rushing, going to get work. Rushing to go to tennis practice. Rushing. Just our life is faster than when me and you grew up.
That's
and you
right.
Grew up, okay?
That's right.
So that live scope could give that guy that's got an hour and a half when he gets off work.
Opportunity, and that's
He can run down there
Got a
and
half
catch
a
him a
day
limit.
Saturday.
He can catch him a limit of good crappie and not get himself in trouble, not catch too many. Let's say that everybody wants to do right. But that live scope gives him an angle where he could go down there. Maybe he don't have but 1 day a week to fish. Maybe he only got 2 days a week to fish, and he loves to fish. That scope gives him that angle.
It's more efficient.
It
Yeah,
does.
It's just what you
more
said.
efficient.
It does. It provides
Look,
you.
him trolling around catching 3, or him catching his 15, coming back to the boat ramp,
That's right.
loading
going
up,
home.
and
So
going home.
It does. It absolutely does. That is one of the beauties of live scope. Once you get proficient with it and you learn how to use it, and you've got an idea of what the fish are doing for that time of the year,
Yeah.
then if you're like 90% of the world, you're working.
Right.
You're working Monday through Friday. Maybe you didn't get to go. It helps you be more successful in your time on the water.
Right.
Again, just go buy one, plug it up, and go, well, I'm going to be. No, there is a learning curve. It requires some dedication. Y'all listen, for 1 month, 1 straight month, I probably never caught over 10 crappie with a live scope. Just learning how to use what is this?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
Because there's more than crappie in the river.
Mm-hmm. That's right. No.
And then you can learn the difference between a crappie, a catfish, a carp, gar, a spoonbill,
Right.
drum. I mean, shad, brim. You've got to learn kind of what the crappie are.
It
look
makes
like.
you a better fisherman as far as looking
yeah, and
at.
once you identify what crappie
especially if
are,
you're fishing the same place like you do in Tombigbee River, you know
Yeah.
what structure's in that hole.
Yeah.
You know where those fish want to be.
but
Do you
the
ever
hate-
catfish? Do you ever use it for catfish?
I have used it for
I bet it'd be good
catfishing.
for catfish.
It will increase your odds at
Really?
catfishing. as
That's
well,
wild.
too.
I didn't figure that.
Yeah, especially bottom fishing for catfish.
Not them showing up big flatheads you can find.
hammerhead. You can hurt them.
Whoa.
Oh, so
Better than telephone, man. What the hell?
yeah. It's you can.
It's hard to
you
beat
can
that
do
telephone, Lennis.
The
I'm
like
gonna tell you.
no,
know
tell
about that.
yeah the telephone. I'm
That's
sure
pretty-
it works.
yeah.
well. I don't know. I'm told it does.
I'm gonna call Lennis. You do what you want to do. Your telephone.
Well, I'm just saying that I heard that before.
So let's go back to what I do and what I do on. I started with minnows and a cork and trying to and it works with live scoping and then I went to trying jigs prior to live scope. I didn't use a lot of jigs. I didn't have a lot of comp. In the spring, I could catch some on it.
I can't run a jig.
It wasn't long afterwards though that so when you're live scoping, typically 8-10 foot deep a lot of times, and one of the more successful methods is people will run a egg sinker up their line, maybe let's just say an 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce, up to a 1/2 ounce egg sinker, and then you put what we call bobber stoppers, keep it from sliding down on your bait, and then about a foot below you tie your jig. And what that does, it gets it to that fish quick.
Oh, it
Gets it
don't
to it quick.
float,
You don't
then
have
you're
a
there.
16th ounce head float down.
Oh, okay. That
So
makes
you
sense.
shoot it
Yeah.
down there to it fairly quick.
especially if you're in current.
It's
Yeah.
it's a strategy in every
So-
damn thing they do.
Yeah.
But you shoot it down there to them quick. You get it in front of them quick, and we're jumping all around.
No,
I
that's what
apologize,
we do.
guys.
No,
but
that's
you
what
know
we do.
what did I see different when I first pulled up? You catch 5, you leave, and now what am I seeing now? Number one of the biggest tip I would give anyone for live scoping or pretty much crappie fishing of any kind is boat control. Boat control is detrimental in live scoping.
Yeah.
You can't run up on them. They are becoming more and more spooky, Chris. Trolling motor noise. Drop a can of crappie niblets in the boat, and you might as well nearly leave now.
Scares them.
It terrifies.
Papa was right.
Yeah. Goes back to those.
Well, Papa was right, but Papa
He just wanted me to shut up.
no. Since this live scope showing, I am seeing much more
Fish
sensitivity
respond to noise.
trolling motor noise.
Yeah.
You've got to be very quiet and keep it to a bare minimum.
Hunter's dog agrees with you.
Yeah, I heard that. So, but I've seen them spook. What I'm seeing now is you catch one.
Really?
You catch 2, and they drift off. They will swim away from that structure, and they'll go out and suspend.
For a little while and come back.
Sometimes they don't. But when they do come back, they're on to you, right? So
Yeah.
they know what's going on, and they're very.
They
for
know
me,
that boat's not natural.
They know when you catch 1 or 2 of them too, even if they don't have a boat. In my opinion, even
And
if
pressure.
they don't have it's pressure. It is pressure.
What we've been
from
saying
more
since we started
and
the podcast.
more and more live scopers are coming in, and so again, I'm fortunate enough
Well,
to
y'all
have
getting
a
in their
camp
grill.
on the river. Yes,
Y'all getting in their grill. Well,
and I'm telling you, Chris, you don't realize how many fish suspend in open water.
No,
they
I
just
don't.
sit out there and
Yeah.
have nothing around them. And I think that's where they went in the past for solitude, right? They got away
for the
from
last 50
when the
years.
bite was off.
Yeah,
they
so
just
they're
went to
out
open water.
suspended in 15 foot of water, and they're hanging
down there.
12 foot deep.
Hey.
Yeah, life's good, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's bothering me, and all of a sudden, here comes a little minnow. I'll just eat it. It's right here at my face, and
Yeah.
wow, they get jerked out of the water.
There went Uncle Johnny.
Yep, Uncle Johnny's gone.
Gone.
So you're seeing them. I think it's nature's way of
learning.
learning.
Under
right?
pressure.
They're
Yeah.
they're learning how to cope with
That's
a live
pretty neat.
scope.
Bond, yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say this about live scope. I've live scoped thousands of fish, and there's people that have live scoped way more than I have. I've yet to see it kill a single fish though. It's us that kills them.
Yeah, that's right.
You can shine them all you want to.
Yeah.
So we control.
You control taking too much.
We
It's
control
like
taking
anybody
too
else.
much. So here's what I do, and I'm not saying that anyone else should do what I'm doing. I'm not. I'm not.
But I tell you what, I am seeing more game wars, chicken coolers and stuff.
Yeah, and I think they need.
I mean, they
to.
know now
They need to
because the state's coming down on them.
But
Anytime you take more resources than we give,
We get more efficient.
we
I
get.
think you got to
that's right.
police it. 'Cause
Yeah.
what a saying that probably applies to this. I heard it when I was studying, take my drone license test. Is the state has to regulate to the most foolhardy among us. You got to have a regulation there to protect us against that knowledge.
agree.
It ought to be like we wiped
foolhardy.
everything out back in the 1900s. Same.
well, let's say us three go to Columbus tomorrow crappie fishing. We can keep 90.
Good
legally.
idea.
We can keep 90 legally tomorrow. Now it's hard to catch 90. And look, let me go back. The
God,
best
my.
2 days I had last year crappie fishing.
Don't tell me you caught 90.
No live scope. Caught.
Really?
I had a friend of mine.
Yeah, go up, put enough people in that boat now.
No, I had a friend of mine that was terminally ill, and he wanted to go. And I said, man, let's go. So we went, and man, it was a great day. We were up on the banks. We were fishing with a cork, and I said, look, I don't want any. I said, but
We're right there where we need to be. Yeah.
what do you want to do? He's like, well, I don't go much.
That's
we
right.
eat them.
Yeah.
So we had a really good day that
Roll
day.
Tide.
Really
Yeah.
good day that day. Went back a couple of other times, not to that spot, just when I realized what the fish were doing at that time, and none of it had a live scope. Live scope wasn't even on. They were up on the bank. We were having some great times, fishing a cork, jig, 18 inches deep, just having a great time. But what I do, and this is what I do, and I am not saying I'm better than anyone. I keep 15. That's all I keep.
That's enough. That's enough.
That's 30 fillets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably hammerheads too. Good
I
ones.
don't keep anything over 12 inches.
You like the little ones?
If you're going to keep the big ones,
From
you got to cut them up.
sustainability.
You got to cut
Cut them up in pieces
to eat the dang.
Yeah, because they're so thick.
So
yeah.
why bother?
A little bit of a
No,
waste.
that's right. I agree with you. Yeah.
Let
the
someone
best
else-
ones are like that.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
the 10-incher ones. So
Yeah.
so if a 10-inch crappie's,
good
sexually
fillet
mature,
inside.
right, let them
Yeah.
go. Eat those. Let the big ones go. Now, I know
Okay.
people, and look, if Chris comes and goes fishing, he goes, man, let's go twice a year. Keep what you want to. Nothing wrong with that. A guy like me that fishes 50 days a year or 50 to 100 days, whatever I get to fish, it's not as much as it was, but, 15, sometimes I don't I went Saturday, didn't keep any. Just threw them back.
Threw them back.
Yeah, what was I? I mean, I keep around.
First man I ever heard throw crappie back.
I throw them. Well, I keep around.
Our buddies that settle in buckets ain't gonna like it.
No, 2 to 3 gallons of fillets. I freeze them in quart bags.
You can just
but
eat so much. Yeah.
only so much, and so I throw them back. I throw all the big ones back because if I got to cut them up, why not keep one that I don't have to cut up and let someone else enjoy it? If that's what you like, keep it. But I don't. I throw everything 12 inches and back. And now I've got friends now that do a lot of live scoping that pretty much do the same thing.
That's cool. It's releasing crappie.
They throw the 12 inches and
First
back.
I ever
back.
heard
They
that.
throw it back. And we don't have to. We legally can keep anything. Like I said, there's a 16-incher swimming that I caught 2 weeks ago. Someone else may have caught it, and they may not. I don't know. It's a for the Tom Bigby, it's a really big crappie.
Lennis, I went by where your son Si works at over at Outlaw and talked to Dylan.
he does.
And Dylan and them they own Outlaw Sports in Columbus, and great place. And they're putting live scopes on, and he knew that we were going to do this podcast, and I said, he said, Daddy's boat's back there. I said, I want to go see it. I ain't never seen it. So I went back here in the back, and I think Si would know, they're putting those things in, and you know it's got a dang 12-inch monitor on the front of that, but it was pretty cool to see them. And I asked him, he said, everybody's using them. Well, he's in them, he sells them.
Yeah.
So he was smart enough to say, hey, we'll put them in for you. You know,
So,
and him putting them in, which I know Lennis put his own in, but you know, people putting those things in there, and you know, I think that one, I don't know what the model was. He said, you know, $4,500 would get that scope.
Let's
Is that,
dig into
that about
that,
right?
Chris.
I mean,
let's dig into that a minute. So, there's certainly options in live scoping, and I'm going to assume that this is someone listening to this podcast that goes,
Well,
okay,
somebody won't know how much.
I've heard a lot about live scoping. So what does it take for me to get into it? And
What's the cost of entry?
Yeah, that's right.
it was so. This is an opinion of mine, and I again, you take it for what it's worth, and you get what you can afford. I get it. They sell several different screen sizes, right? So you can get a 7-inch, I believe, a 9-inch, a 10-inch, and a 12-inch. And I even think there's some 16 opportunities, but that's overkill. Mine personally is a 10-inch. It was one of the first ones that come out. I've got an older live scope that I would recommend a 12-inch. So, and for those that don't know, I would say, can you watch college football on your phone? And the answer is yes. You can watch college football on your phone, but can you see it like you can on a big 75-inch television?
No, that's right.
You know that you assume they're throwing the ball on your phone because of the camera panning.
You got context.
Yeah. But on a 75-inch, you see the ball going through the air, right? So the bigger the screen, the more the detail, the easier it is to see. For me personally, I think the 10 is the minimum I'd go, and I think 12 is actually where you want to be. They started out with the transducer, which that particular model was the first one I think was a 32. They called it, maybe it's a LVS 32 or something like that, and they went to the LVS 34. LiveScope actually came out in 2015. It wasn't that big of a hit till 2018. It came out with Panoptic's LiveScope, if my memory is correct, and that was the one that revolutionized LiveScope. It was really good, and now the 34 series is what you see most transducers, which is the piece that would go on your trolling motor on a pole. Personally, I use a pole.
How long is the pole?
Well, mine's only about 4 foot long. It mounts over the side of the boat. It goes vertical. It's just almost like another trolling motor shaft in the water.
Oh, okay. So you just
And then I got a handle on the top, and what I do is I just scan it back and forth manually with my hand. Mine's on the left side. I like it on the left side. I use my left hand to do it. And I hold my crappie pole with my right hand because I'm right-handed. And I scan around with it, just constantly looking, and what that does for me that I like better. Now, this is preference, right? That's all it is say I find a group of crappie out there that's 20 feet and the wind's blowing, and I can point the transducer at those crappie, and no matter where the boat goes, I can always just move the handle left or right to maintain contact with those fish. The other method would be to put it on the
trolling
motor.
Yeah.
And what happens, and I fished with both. I've got a really good friend that is very, very successful. He only uses this trolling motor, and he is very good. I mean, by all means, he's better than I am.
He knows that angle.
He's good at, so when the wind, so you got the trolling motor pointed at a school of fish, and the wind blows you left or right, and you've got to correct it with the trolling motor, right?
Yeah, sure.
So naturally, you lose view of those fish for a moment until you correct that boat position.
Because your angles.
And then you've got to come back to where they're at. And that will change sometimes. Again, that's a thin ray that's pointed at those fish. So it can change the look of them, and it gets a little more. But he's very proficient with it. I mean, he's really good at it. For me, it's better to remain in contact with the fish all the time. Right. And then I just move the boat where I need to. They make some mechanical, battery operated ones that move, like similar to an autopilot trolling motor or something that will electronically move that transducer to stay with those fish. But I'm not familiar with them. I think they're pretty expensive. But my pole though, Chris, we were talking about my pole. My pole's made of PVC, man. I went to the hardware store.
That's what I figured.
I went to
technician, another technician.
I went to the hardware store, bought some tees, 90s, caps.
All these technicians run together.
Around Millport.
Yeah. I made my own pole, and it works great. It's good enough for me.
That don't
it's
surprise
good
me.
enough for me. So, but once you decide, a bundle, so you can buy bundles. They're all over the internet. Different companies or different,
popularity.
Bass Pro, and these people that put on, maybe Outlaw does. I don't know. I haven't talked with Dylan about it or Si, either one, but you can buy a bundle, and it'll be a 12-inch screen. My screen's touch screen, so you actually touch my screen like you can a cell phone.
Really?
Yeah, you can freeze the screen. You can.
Wow.
You can do way more with mine than I need. It has
record.
I can do waypoints.
Save that, and download, drop pins.
I can do all of that with mine. But you can get one that's non-touch screen, which does fabulous for live scoping. It is. It doesn't have lake maps with it. It doesn't. It's for the guy like.
I was going to ask if you could load. Does it have like
I
SD
do.
card? Can you load like a KML file?
Yeah,
can you load waypoints? And
mine, you can load different lakes throughout the country on the mine, and you can with a non-touch screen. I'm sure you probably can.
Y'all gonna make it where my crappie don't taste as good. But got all this other stuff up there.
Getting nervous.
Yeah, man, it got me shifty right now.
The touch screens are more expensive, but you don't need them for if you're just live scope. Say you're like me on the Tombigbee River. If I get lost on Tombigbee, I've got more trouble than
you didn't have too much to drink. If you didn't get lost on the river,
or having a stroke, or something.
That's right.
I'm out of my mind. But so I do use the waypoint feature though, because it gets hard to remember sometimes when you've got a bunch of them out there. They're like, well, say you're on the main river and it's a mile-long stretch and there's no real visible features to distinguish that as unique. It's easy to knock a point down, and then a lot of times you're fishing offshore too, Chris. I mean, you're 100 yards off the bank.
That's
you're 50 yards off the bank, and you have no way unless you triangulate something to mark that spot. So you can just pop a waypoint, and when you get close to it, it'll say you're 10 foot from it, 8 foot from it, and then all of a sudden you start seeing that top or that root ball or whatever it is you were fishing. So
that's wow.
It comes at an expense.
So having it on that pole, and this may be a dumb question, and that's what I'm here for.
No.
Is there any piece of hardware, I guess, is the screen in your boat, or can you take it with you and get another boat?
Well,
or is part of it permanent on your boat?
Yeah, the one I saw, he had it mounted right there by the trolling motor.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Chris is right. Chris is wrong. So here's how mine is. Mine currently is in a farm pond in Millport, Alabama. My son can have it out of that boat in under 3 minutes, and we can go put it in another boat.
Wow, let me ask you this. Let's just say that I crashed a drone in a lake local here a couple of years ago. You think
I can find it? Well, assuming it's a decent size, but yeah, we could probably find it.
You crashed it in the creek.
That's another podcast.
Yeah,
no, this is one. So this one I didn't go in here.
So I like to run catfish baskets. I don't know why. It's just something I grew up kind of doing it. So I drifted away from it for a number of years, and now I'm back doing it.
Because you love to smell that cheese.
Yeah, cheese. I try to. I put a little bit on my pillow at night, But
put some on.
So I had one get hung.
Dash.
And I said, don't. In the past, we fought and would drag and try. I said, man, just leave it. Next time I come back, I'll bring the live scope. Come back with a live scope. I see the basket on the water. See the fish in the basket.
Wow.
And knew how to pull it out of there.
I just took my drag, hooked it from the back of the basket,
and pulled it
pulled it backwards.
So
got fish, got basket, got everything back.
That's awesome.
All because of the live scope. Yeah. So, but back to the live scope. There's additional costs with live scope. It is just not a bundle with hardware or a screen.
But that joker, you've had yours for what, 7 years?
Yeah, it lasts a long time if you take care of it.
You ain't went up to no new thing.
No,
the same one?
till it breaks. I'm not going to.
Right.
But I can definitely see the difference between mine and a newer one. So they are better.
Yeah.
They're current.
That's
They are. Yeah, it's clearer. It's a little more easier to distinguish what types of fish. But if you want to get into one, you can get a bundle. Chris, I think you could probably get a bundle for $3,000, just a basic live scope model. The more fancier, we'll call it, and the more features, it's kind of like the difference between vehicles, right? You can get a work truck, and then you can get a King Ranch, right? So the King Ranch is going to run you $5,000 probably. But one of the things people don't think about, these things require a lot of power to run them.
Got to have his own lithium battery.
It needs a lithium battery. You can run it. I've seen people run them on.
That's what Dylan showed it, his own battery.
I've seen people run these things and heard of people. I haven't seen it. Let me take it back. I've seen people running these things off of.
Their cranking battery.
No, they run them off of a DeWalt drill battery.
Really? And just keep putting pressure
I don't know
in there.
how that works, but it is. But
Matt
it just
would know.
It just doesn't last all that long. But they do use some. I've seen that before. But my recommendation would be get you a good lithium battery
and hook it up straight to it.
Typically, they got a 10-year warranty on them, and then they're about 10 times the cost of a normal battery. It seems like, but they're a lot lighter. And it goes by. So we were referring to mine earlier. I actually have mine where I can put it in multiple boats. The black box that comes with it, I forget the technical name for it. And the battery, my lithium battery is only probably 6 inches wide by a foot long.
Yeah,
they're all in a small cooler.
Yeah.
And I have my wires ran out. And what I've done is I have a quick connect for my monitor. All it is, it's called a ram mount. I don't know if you guys ever seen it, but it's a ball that mounts on the base of something, and then you just bolt that ball, and it gives it the opportunity to move all over.
Around. That's right.
I just put 2 or 3 of those balls in the boats that we want to use.
You set it up.
Yeah, and I just undo it, and I take that cooler
smart.
with a battery and everything in it. I take it to the next boat, and I set it down because, a lot of times when I'm by myself and I'm kind of reluctant, I have been fishing a long time, so I've acquired a couple of boats throughout the years, and I've got a little tiller steer boat I like to use by myself. It's cheaper to operate. It's efficient. I hunt out of it and different things, but so I got a ball in it if I want to go by myself. And me and one guy can fish pretty good out of it. And then I've got an aluminum boat and Express. Both of them are aluminum boats. And then Si has a boat. So if he needs it, he'll carry it with him, and if I need it, I can put it in any of the other 3 boats. So they make ice fishing packages for it, Chris, to tell you. So, I mean, it's portable when you can take it in an ice fishing package.
That's pretty cool.
So, but yeah, I would recommend anyone just get the 34 series transducer with a 12-inch screen. Get you a good lithium battery. Don't have very high expectations to begin with. And go out and know you're going to need a summer to really learn how to use it and be efficient.
And be responsible, too.
And then take care. Like I said to start this podcast with, you can count them as you catch them. You don't have to count them while you clean them.
Yeah.
That's right.
Take care of them. When you get enough to eat.
You got a camera. You can document it all.
So let me tell you one of my crappie stories. You're going to remember it. Brent, you probably wasn't here yet. But when me and Lennis was younger, probably was about the 8th or 9th grade. You remember when they had the crappie-thon?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Brent, what they done, they went out and caught crappie, and they tagged them. And you had a $25 tag, and that's a big deal. Had a $1,000 tag, had a $5,000 tag, and one of them you could win a boat. Well, there's a black boy at school, Eric Harris. He lived down on the river, down by August Landing. And old Eric, pretty good woodsman. And we were young. That was a big thing in Columbus. That Possum Town Crappie-thon. They called it something else. I can't remember. But Eric caught 3 of them damn tag fish. And, that was a big deal. He made the paper. So we was, Eric. I
guess if they released them all in the same area.
He was pretty slick, but he stayed real quiet. And so finally when it was over with, they didn't catch most of them, but he caught 2 $25 and a $100 one.
Oh, wow.
That was a big deal back in the day now.
Yeah, it was big.
So Eric, we hit him up. I said, Eric, man, how the hell did you catch them fish? He said, I was hiding in the bushes. He said, when they put them out right there, and he said, most of the time they just stay. He said, I went in there and caught all 3 of them in the same day. He said, but I just kept them. And then he caught all 3 of them in the same slough down there. Me and old John Dale laughed. But he sure did. That crappie-thon. That was a big deal back in the day.
And the other thing too, I want to add to this on the live scoping is there's traditionally you got 10, 11, 12 foot. You can get up to I think an 18-foot crappie pole now, maybe
God
longer.
almighty.
So what you're
B&M
finding
pole.
as I use primarily B&M. Most of mine come from Outlaw. Well, I guess every one I've got comes from Outlaw. There is another's a green rod that I've got. I forget the name.
Hit Dylan up for the sponsor money. We done dropped Outlaw.
Outlaws come in a good bit, but
he got the hat on.
Size decked out in nowhere.
He works there. So.
Yeah, so he's got a...
So the distance you can put yourself, so you see wave noise too, right? Wind noise, pounding on a boat's frightening them. So the further you can keep. Now, there's some people take ultralights and throw to them, but primarily most people I know on the Tom Bigby use a single pole, and I like 14-footers. They seem to be something I'm comfortable handling, and I can still stay far enough away.
As they get shallower, do you try to back off further from them?
It appears to me it's almost the opposite of that. As they get shallower, I go to 12-foot pole. They become more aggressive because they're spawning, so they're a little more aggressive. You just stay quiet and you can catch them. But as they're out staging, and Chris was alluding to this earlier, staging going in the spawn, and then the absolute best time, and this is another tip, is the fall. They go winter.
Yeah.
And they congregate as they winter. And I crappie fish year round, so they'll group up, and you can work. You got to be careful, but again, when you're dependent upon government
to regulate,
that's not a good plan.
That's right.
You have to self-impose some stuff, right? So
that's all of us.
That's right. You've got to self-impose
self-responsibility.
Yes,
we're seeing that with turkeys. That's a realization with turkeys, and this is the same way. As we get more efficient.
Take care of the resource, right?
No, I like it. I mean,
take care of the resource.
You act like I'm a hater over here.
And the one thing I would say for the Tom Bigby River as we go into this, and this is part of the reason I want to get on this podcast, and I know we may be running long on time, but I think we're having some. The biggest story I can tell for everyone here is starting my first tournament in '93 in bass, and today being 2025. The water quality, the fishing
vegetation
area that we had in '93 is nowhere near. It is 1/100th of what it was, in my opinion. We've had some invasive species come in, grasses, hyacinth, Cuban bulrush. Now we're seeing giant Sylvania take over, is becoming a really big problem. And matter of fact, quick story. I remember a friend of mine by the name of Kevin Campbell. A lot of people may know him, may not.
I know Kevin.
Yeah. Kevin and I were fishing in the Rivermont area of Pickenville one time. I remember the first pot of hyacinth I ever seen in my life. It's about the size of a laundry basket floating on the water. And I told him, I said, Rick, what do you think that is? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, man, maybe that's a good thing. Fish will get under it or something. If I'd have known then what I know now, we'd have picked it up. Yeah. We'd have put it in a boat and hauled it off. But
threw it in somebody's yard.
But what we've seen that do, and what I've seen it do, and again, there's fish biologists and people that could shed more light than I can on it. But as you see that stuff start to float in, it floats over shallow water areas. It kills all the native grasses. The sunlight can't reach it. Then when it dies in the winter, it sinks to the bottom, and it creates a real mushy bottom. And then it'll resurface. I forget the dates. I think they said a water hyacinth bulb can last 3 years or something, stay dormant, and then come back up, something crazy. This Cuban bulrush will make a mat on top of it literally looks like you can walk on it. And all of them, and this really goes back to, I used to be a really big duck hunter, and I still duck hunt now. I just had to move areas, but it took a lot of those shallow water areas away. And so it goes back, and we've hit on this several times when we talked about water levels impacting spawning habitat. I think for the Tom Bigby River, you're seeing the spawning habitat is gone.
Diminished a lot. Yeah.
It's diminished. You don't see those native.
You don't have that shallow.
You don't have those coontail flats. You don't have that milfoil flats for fry. Whether it be bass or brim or crappie, to go in and get big enough to live
and hide.
So now I'm more concerned about spawning habitat on the Tom Bigby than I am about live scoping. Yeah, live scoping certainly we know there's there's 50
a lot more ecological issues.
There
than
is
regulation.
So yeah, and then
technology.
To combat it, the Corps of Engineers came in and done a real
bunch of spraying,
a lot of intensive spraying practices. Yeah. And I get it; they're trying to get those invasive species. Well, in the meantime, they clipped all the native stuff too.
Ain't no doubt.
So when they eradicated
it all.
Yeah, when they eradicated the native stuff, I mean, there's flats. There's the Wilkes Creek area, Gainesville was. I'm gonna make up a number. I say 100-acre flat of mill floor hydrilla flats that. Man, we're booming with life. I mean, from bass to crappie to, it was just a mecca for fisheries. And it is now a mud flat. It has nothing on it anymore. So I think for the Tom Bigby, first of all, we've got to be stewards. We've got to protect the resources, fishermen. I think the other thing we need to look at is not just live scoping. So I guess what I will close with, and Phil Robertson says this, I'm going to quote him, just keep life simple, right?
Yeah.
And
don't try to do too much.
Yeah, and love your neighbor, right? So if a guy wants to live scope, man, let him live scope. If a guy doesn't want to live scope, don't live scope. But either way, they're your neighbors, right?
That's right.
No need in drawing a line in the sand going, this isn't right.
It's legal.
It's fishing.
You got a guy doing something legal.
It's fishing. It's fishing, guys. What a great country to live in that we can get mad about fishing. Right? I mean, that's great. So
one thing I was wondering about before we get out of here,
sure.
I didn't want to interrupt you earlier. We talked about the things you learn with a live scope.
Sure.
And you're talking about that scenario where you catch fish off the top. Are you able to, with that live scope, go back and see how soon other fish move in? That seems like an interesting piece.
Pretty, it is
if other fish move in,
well, like
right
Lennis said, they move back with that pressure, and how long does it take for them to
like if there's 25 on the top, and you and your buddy sit there and catch 23 of them,
how long does it take for some more? Have you been able to
tell if
this is what I would tell you to relate this to. So how many times have you killed a turkey on the same ridge?
Every year.
Yeah, they come there for a reason.
That's right.
It's natural.
That's what we've said. If you learn a track, you can kill the turkey. Generation after generation, they
when
use
you
the
kill that turkey the next year for whatever reason, you can almost repeat the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So the same can be said for fish. Do they come back the next day? No, it takes longer than that.
They imprint.
But there is a reason they're there. No, it provides
something they need.
One of the two things they need to do. Right. They either need to breed or they need to eat. So it provides. Yeah. So it provides a habitat that provides them what they're looking for.
That's awesome,
guys. I appreciate y'all.
That's look, I learned more. I know I want to eat a crappie now. I'm about ready.
Yeah.
Well, look, I appreciate you coming on. That's one of those things that's controversial. It's a lot like so many of the things we talk about in hunting is there are gaps and there's differences between us and how we utilize technology. Yeah. There's technologies that have made us more efficient, and for
it's amazing.
Every one of us inside the law, I'll say this, we all kind of have to draw that point for us as individuals.
That's right.
Like the guy you said that doesn't like the live scope, well, he may be out there for something else.
That's right.
The thing he's doing without that live scope may be the reason he's out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it's similar. That's turkey hunting, deer hunting, trail cameras, feeders. Yeah. It's, inside the law, I think we all individually make that distinction for ourselves, what we're out there for.
Well, what
amount of technology are we comfortable with? At some point, that technology is taking away from my experience.
There's a lot of ways to measure success.
That's right.
And for too many people, it's about the numbers that we catch, or it's the numbers that we kill. It's about taking that picture to put on Facebook. It's about that Snapchat with a picnic table full of crappie, or a tailgate full of, or spelling dove. Numbers out in doves. Everything has a limit.
Blowing a little smoke.
Yeah, it's getting that recognition. We all want that recognition of being.
It's culture
of the younger you are, the more you're hungry for it, and then as you get older, it starts to mean less to you. But again, there's several ways to measure success. Go enjoy the outdoors, though.
Yeah.
Go have a good time.
That's a good
Some
takeaway.
days are better than others.
Yeah.
But go enjoy what God's give us. I mean, it's God's creation, and go enjoy it.
Nah, look, I can't add anything to that. All right.
Thank y'all.
We appreciate y'all tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See y'all.
See ya.